everybody, let's go ahead and get started for this evening. Y'all ready to have some fun, ready to learn? Y'all alert after an easy day at work? Everybody's awake? Yeah? Everybody's about to go to sleep because they're so full. Ah, I see. Well, listen, you guys are just, tonight's the halfway point. It's our 5th week. And next week is going to change again. It's going to get real exciting next week. So far we've been talking about the nations that are going to be active, have an active role in the end times. And then last week and this week, we're looking at some cultural signs of the end times. What we can see as far as how things are going on culturally, how we can see that and know that the end of the age is very near to us. Today we're going to talk about radical Islam and persecution. And then next week we're going to get into the rapture. And we're going to go from the rapture all the way to eternity. And so next week it's going to be exciting, it's going to be fun, it's going to be informative. If there's somebody that you'd like to invite to come and listen to those talks about that part of the end times, please feel free to invite your friends, neighbors, co-workers, relatives, and then we'll get started talking about the rapture. Again, the purpose of this study is to gain knowledge about God's future plans regarding the end times, and then through that knowledge, experience the peace of God, and then live with hope and anticipation for His return. Again, God does not want His children to fear His return. He doesn't want you to be anxious. He doesn't want you to worry. He doesn't want you in the dark about His end times plans. And so it's all in Scripture. It's all laid out. It is a mystery at times, but it can be figured out. I believe we can know everything there is to know about Jesus' return except for the when. And so that's what we're doing. We're unfolding. We're working through this mystery. That's why we've had to start with, hey, who are the players that are going to be active in the end times? What culturally are we going to be looking at? Instead of just being able to go straight to the rapture, the second coming, the tribulation, all of those things. And so we've had to do some groundwork, but we're going to get there. We're going to get there. A bride does not fear her wedding day. She looks forward to it with excitement. And John 16:33, Jesus said, "These things have I spoken to you, have I spiked to you." Don't look at my spelling. Spoken to you that in me you may have peace. And so that's what this is for. That's what this is all about. That as we go through these lessons each week, you develop a knowledge, and then through that knowledge you develop a peace, the peace of God that transcends all understanding. We don't have to fear His return. That's going to be the most exciting day for us as believers. If you're not a believer, it's a day to be worried about. It's a day to be anxious about. But as far as believers go, it's a very exciting time for us. Today we're going to look at radical Islam. A very real threat to not only Israel, but to us as believers. I don't know if you know this. You have a target on your back. And there is a radical Islamic sect out there, belief out there, religion out there that is targeting you to get rid of you, to wipe you off the face of this earth. And I know that that's just, he's just saying that, that's reality. In fact, once they get the ability to do that, they're going to do that. And you'll find out why tonight. But you have a target on your back. Israel has a target on its back. And this religion of radical Islam, not all Islam is radical. Not all Muslims are radical. Most of them are peaceful. But a sect of them is very, very radical. And really it's because of their belief system. It's because of what they believe. You and I believe that the Bible is the written Word of God, that it's perfect, infallible. They believe the same of the Quran. And so they are living to be obedient to the Quran. And so we'll talk about that this evening. Islam is the fastest growing religion in the world. It's only been around for 1,500 years. It's not a very old religion. Only within the last few decades has the Western world become aware of the power and presence of Islam in the world. In fact, a recent poll indicated that only 16% of the public report knowing a lot about the religious beliefs and practices of Muslims. 57% say that they know a little, and 26% say they know nothing at all. Where do you stand? Do you know a lot about Islam? Do you know a lot about the Muslim faith? You need to. And so tonight I'm going to try to lay out as much as possible. These slides are going to help us somewhat. There's some quotes on here that'll be good for you to read as we're going through these sheets here. The history of Islam, we'll go through real quick. The name Islam literally means submission. Literally means submission. So a Muslim is one who submits to God. One who submits to God. There are about 1.8 billion Muslims in our world today, and about 3.45 million live here in the United States, about 1% of our population. And believe it or not, the largest Muslim populations are actually in the Asia-Pacific regions, not necessarily in the Arab countries that we would think where most of them are. The founder of Islam, according to Islamic tradition, the founder of Islam is Muhammad, born in Mecca in AD 570. That's present-day Saudi Arabia. His dad died before he was born. His mom died when he was 6. He was raised by his paternal grandfather and grew up to become a camel driver and then a merchant. At 26, he married a wealthy caravan owner named Khadijah, who was 40, and together they had 6 children. Muhammad worked in professions that brought him into contact with Christians and Jews who caused him to question the religion of his people. And at 40, while he was meditating in a cave, he received his first revelation. And from that moment on, God occasionally revealed to him messages that he declared to his people. These messages would form the verses of Quran, which Muslims regard as the divine word of God. Interestingly, Muhammad could not read or write. And so he would have to verbally share these visions with people who would then write them down. And so, and that's how we came up with the Quran. So Allah is their God. He is the moon god. One of the many names that they have for the moon god. But this is the one that he liked, and so this is the one that he chose to be their Messiah. In the 7th century Arabian world, the people worshipped more than 360 gods, one for each day of the lunar year. And one of these was the moon god, the male counterpart to the female sun god. As again, moon god was called by various names, one of which is Allah, which was the favorite god of Muhammad's family. He elevated the moon god Allah and declared him to be the one true God. And in spreading his religion of Islam, he slaughtered thousands of people who resisted the conversion. Islam today. So Muhammad died in Mecca in AD 632. And after his death, the Islamic community divided over who would be his successor. So we come up with the Shiite Muslims and the Sunni Muslims. And that's still how it's divided today. There's conflict between these sects is one of the major stress points in Iraq and throughout the Islamic world. They don't get along very well. But the Sunni now comprise 90% of the Islamic world. So 9 out of every 10 Muslims identifies as a Sunni Muslim. And they believe that Muhammad's spiritual gifts died with him and that their only authority today is the Quran. The Shiites believe that their leaders, the Imams, have authority on par with the Quran. And it is the Shiites that believe that the 12th Imam went into concealment hundreds of years ago and continues to live there until he returns as the Mahdi, the Muslim Messiah. So just as we are waiting for the return of Jesus, they are also waiting for the return of their Messiah. But in order for their Messiah to come, something has to happen. But the habits of Islam, the Sunnis mandate 5 acts of worship and the Shiites mandate 8. And what I put on your sheet is 5 that they both practice. And so the first thing is they recite the Shahada, the Islamic creed. There is no God but Allah, and Muhammad is his messenger. And every Muslim has to recite this. So, there is no God but Allah, and Muhammad is his messenger. Another thing that they both practice is prayer, salat. Muslims pray 5 times a day, bowing their head toward Mecca. They do it in the early morning, in the early and late afternoon, at sunset, and an hour after sunset. Give you another quote there. To give alms, that's another practice that they have to go through. The zakat, Muslims are required to give 2.5% of their income to those in need. They also fast. They refrain from food during the daylight hours through the lunar month of Ramadan, seeing as how their god is the moon god. And then they have to make the pilgrimage. Those physically and financially able must visit Mecca at least once during their lifetime. It's a journey that takes about a week and includes many stops at other holy sites along the way. So now let's get into the radical part of the Islam. There's a word called jihad. If you're familiar with that word, it's a word that means struggle. They believe in jihad. They believe that this struggle is one of the ways that is going to bring their Messiah back. So there must be a jihad for their Messiah to return. So in other words, there must be chaos in the world. And so they are working feverishly, they are working tirelessly, they are working around the clock to get to the point to where they can create this chaos so that their Messiah will return. And that is a jihad. The greater jihad is the inner struggle of each Muslim to submit to Allah. It's that internal struggle that we all have the same internal struggles to follow God. You know, there's a struggle there that the flesh and the world, the cares of the world want to draw us away from God. Well, they have the same struggle and to follow Allah. But the lesser jihad is the outward struggle to defend the Islamic community. And it's this jihad that strikes fear in the hearts of anyone who rejects radical Islam. Anyone who rejects radical Islam is a target for jihad. It's a target to enter into this struggle. In fact, a big part of jihad is martyrdom. The culture of death. Martyrdom for the sake of Islam is considered a privilege and a great honor. Militants and radicals refer to Israel as Little Satan and the United States as Big Satan. And they're determined to wipe both countries off the map. Saudi Arabia is another big one. In a book that I'm reading by an Israeli citizen, says that the first bomb may go to Saudi Arabia and then the second bomb may go to them in Israel. And so, but today there's not a single Muslim nation on earth where Christians are not persecuted. So every Muslim nation on the earth, Christians can expect to be persecuted. Why? Well, it's the hope of Islam. Here's the hopes of Islam. Radical Islam has a vision of its future that does not bode well for those who stand in the way, i.e. Israel, i.e. the West, i.e. us, i.e. believers, Christians. We're standing in their way. And so the only thing that they know now to do is to create this jihad now to come in and cause chaos and struggle. Because at next point, Islam hopes to rule the world. They want to rule the world. They want the whole world to be Muslim in their faith. Their ultimate goal is to cover the globe with the teachings of Muhammad and bring all into submission of Allah. And the Shiites believe that in order for their Messiah to return, there has to be a worldwide chaos. And creating that chaos on earth is a way to hasten his return. And so they're going to do whatever they got to do to create chaos in the world so that their Messiah can come. So, this makes reasonable negotiations for international peace and stability with a country like Iran out of the question. You know, we're working hard to try to talk Israel into dividing their land to try to bring peace in the Middle East, but it ain't never going to happen.
Nope.
And they can't seem to understand that. They don't care. They want Israel off the map. They don't care about a little land this day and a little more land that day. They don't care about that. They care about Israel being wiped off the map. So never has there been an alliance between Russia and Persia until now. Until now. And we see Bible prophecy unfolding right before our eyes with this alliance between Russia and Iran. And it's Ezekiel 38 is playing out right in front of our eyes. How this coalition is being created between these Islamic nations. All of them are Islamic except for Russia. With a desire to go into Israel because God is going to put the desire in their heart to go down and and go into war with Israel. It's all a part of God's plan. It's all a part of God's plan. So Russia is providing extensive military and technological support. And then Ezekiel 38 foretells that his alliance will one day come against Israel. Ezekiel 38 verse 4, he's going to put a hook in their jaw and he's going to draw them down. He's going to whistle and they're going to come. So that he can destroy them in Israel. And so they think they're coming down to destroy Israel. They think they're coming down to do what their God tells them to do, and the opposite is going to happen. Many of the biblical prophecies concerning the end times will be brought about by the beliefs and actions of radical Islam. As I said, all the major players there in Ezekiel 38 are Muslim, Islamic, radical Islam, except for Russia. And so how do we respond to this threat? Well, on the whole, those who shape our culture and policies are inadvertently accommodating the radical agenda of Islamic conquest. Allah is not another name for the God of the Bible. There are some out there that believe that let's just all worship Allah. Let's just all make Allah the one true God. Let's just all worship Allah. Let's all call God Allah. But they're not even close. Our God and Allah, they're not even close. The Quran is not a divine book that's on par with the Bible. Christians do not call for the genocide of a particular race. The Quran does. Christians do not send suicide bombers to kill innocent people. Radical Islam does. Christians don't work for worldwide chaos to set the stage for the return of their Messiah. Christians work for salvation of Muslims. Muslims call for jihad against those with whom they disagree. So, our God, their God, our Bible, their Quran, nowhere even close to being the same. If not jihad, then this word you see in quotation marks, Fatah. If they can't come in and create chaos, they're going to try to send as many people as they can into your country and to slowly change your country to believe what they believe. It's happening in Europe. They are taking over France. I think you just saw that one. By the year 2040, they think 80% of France will be Muslim. It's happening in England. Pretty much all of Europe is being overtaken by Islam and these radical Islamic Muslims. We currently have 3 Muslims in our government. They're all in the House of Representatives. And so, and I just told you they're 1% of our population. And so we would be crazy not to believe that they're going to try. They know that they can't overpower us. They know they can't come in and create a jihad and chaos, although they tried on 9/11, right? They tried. They're going to come in through the open borders. They're going to come in through our government. They're going to come in other ways and just try to slowly change us over to their way of belief. Because what's their purpose? They want to take over the world. They want everybody to turn and be a Muslim. And so as a church, we need to know that. We need to know that they are out there, that we have a target on our back, that they want to destroy us. This is probably the most imminent threat that we face right now. Because I don't know if you've been watching the news, but our administration just opened $6 billion to Iran. And there's supposed to be some stipulations there, but as the leader of Iran has already said, we're going to do whatever we want to do with this money. You can believe and bet the farm that a lot of that money is going to go toward, building weapon systems to wipe off us and Israel and to create this jihad so that their Messiah will return. And so we need to be ready for that. We need to acknowledge that and know that, be informed about that, and watch. And watch, because we need to keep our eyes open on what's going on over there. Pastor Jimmy Evans, he believes that the very next thing that's going to happen is Jeremiah 49. Israel's going to bomb Damascus, and that's going to be the next battle that Israel faces. And then from there, it's just going to keep going. It's just going to keep going. And so keep your eyes on that. That is definitely a sign of the end times. Iran is not that far away from being able to have the ability to start bombing Israel, bombing us. And so we need to know those things. But perfect. Muslims are within the reach of God's grace. Matthew 5:44 says, "Love your enemies, bless those who curse you, do good to those who hate you, and pray for those who spitefully use you and persecute you." As I said at the very beginning, most Muslims are peaceful. Most Muslims are peaceful. But there's a sect of the radical Islamic sect that want to go out there and create as much chaos as they can. So that's radical Islam. The second thing to talk about tonight is persecution. Persecution of the church. The signs of our time could not be more clear that America is growing increasingly hostile toward biblical Christianity. Y'all believe that? Yeah. It's not easy, or it's not that hard to see it being played out. The Bible is no longer America's moral compass. Those who hold to biblical principles are cited as intolerant at best and lawbreakers at worst. That's you. They think you're intolerant. In fact, they believe that the Bible is hate speech, when it's just the opposite. Dr. Paul Nyquist, president of Moody Bible Institute, he says, get ready. Y'all ain't seen nothing yet. He said, an exciting yet terrifying era is beginning in America for American believers. As cultural changes sweep our country, we'll soon be challenged to live out what the Bible says about confronting and responding to persecution. So that's what we're doing. That's what we're doing through this, is we're getting ready. Stages of Christian persecution. First stage is stereotyping. Today, Christians are often stereotyped as ignorant, uneducated, backward, inhibited, homophobic, hateful, intolerant, and the list just goes on and on. But our duty is to live our convictions in a way that show that these slanderous depictions to be gross distortions of the truth. So we're to live our life differently. We're to live our life to prove that what they think we are, or how they think we are, is indeed incorrect. But that's what we're facing. People look at us as ignorant, as uneducated, as backward. What's good is evil, what's evil is good. Truth is whatever you want it to be. Stage 2 is marginalizing. Many would prefer Christians to be pushed so far to the periphery of society that it is, for all practical purposes, eliminated. So they want to push us to the sidelines, as far out of everyone's vision as possible. In fact, just keep on going off out into nothing. Just go away. They would be perfectly okay with that. But if the church must be allowed to exist, they want to confine to the realm of personal privacy. Public prayer forbidden. Christian influence in public policy eliminated. Christian holidays are secularized. Christians excluded from positions of power and influence. Here's a quote: if you're a politician and believe in God first, that's all good. Just don't run for government office. Run for the church office. Chris Matthews, the former MSNBC personality. So they just don't want us to be involved in anything. They don't want us praying. You saw the guy recently that was the coach, the football coach, that was fired for praying on the field after the games. He was given his job back, given back pay back. But you can see that they don't want to tolerate that. They don't want him out there doing that. They don't want believers on school boards. They don't want believers in places of power and authority and leadership. They don't want us out there. They want us off to the sides. Stage 3 is threatening. Banning religious expression within academic, institutional, corporate, or public arenas is not enough for many secularists. Many individuals have been fired from companies for expressing their religious beliefs and practices on their own time, even on their own time. Even when they're not bothering anybody, they still have a problem with it. They're still threatening to fire them. They're still threatening to demote them. They're still threatening them for expressing their beliefs, even privately. Stage 4 is intimidating. The ACLU, who is all about bringing litigation against Christian companies, anything like that, sued the Mercy Health Partners because it did not offer abortion services to a client experiencing a difficult pregnancy. 2004, actually I think that's supposed to be 2014. Mayor Anise Parker of Houston ordered 5 pastors to turn over all sermons, text messages, and emails addressing homosexuality or gender issues. You may remember that. She said a refusal to contempt of court and jail. Now, fortunately, that got dropped, that got dismissed, and nobody had to do that. Nobody had to go to jail. Nobody had to turn in their sermons or their text messages. Stage 5 is litigated. A growing number of Christians are being taken to court. Example is the Oregon Bakery, owned by a Christian company, is sued for $135,000 for refusing to bake a wedding cake for a lesbian couple. And it's happening all over the country. Whether it's a bakery, whether it's a website designer, whatever it is, we're seeing more and more believers, Christian owners of businesses, finding themselves in litigation. And they're having to use their savings, they're having to use all the money that they have in the world to try to fight for what they believe. And so all of these corporate lawyers that have access to unlimited resources and funds and people and power are just going after Christians in court, just draining them, just draining them to the point where they just can't fight it anymore, to get rid of them. And so persecution is definitely a real thing. But God's people have always been persecuted. Christ was persecuted, as were his disciples. But Christ also warned that they would be. You're going to follow me. It's the path of persecution. You will be persecuted for being a follower of Christ. In the New Testament, we read about King Herod, John the Baptist, Peter and the other apostles, the stoning of Stephen, the first Christian converts who had to flee persecution in Jerusalem. And then, of course, Paul, and many others. Many others. But persecution isn't always a bad thing. In fact, persecution forms a flourishing and supportive community. It made the disciples bolder in proclaiming the truth. I think once you experience persecution, it actually helps live a Christian life. I think it actually emboldens us. I think that it gets us in a position. It's almost like, the first time that the quarterback in the game gets hit and knocked to the ground, it's like now he's ready to start playing. And it's like the same for us when we get persecuted for our beliefs. Well, okay, hey, maybe I'm doing this for a reason. Let's go. Game on. Let's do this. And so it can actually create a flourishing, creative, supportive community, make us bolder. Persecution of Christians in history, the Romans, under Nero, they were burned, they were fed to the lions for entertainment. 17th century Japan made Christianity illegal. They expelled missionaries, they executed converts. China, France, and Russia, they all outlawed Christianity. Persecution of Christians today, every month, 255 Christians are killed, 104 abducted, 180 women are raped or sexually harassed or forced into marriage. 66 churches are attacked. 160 Christians are detained without trial and imprisoned. That's all going on today. That's all going on every month. But persecution, again, what does it produce? It produces character. It produces courage. It produces godliness. And believe it or not, it produces joy. It produces joy. So what can we do? What can we do about the fact that, hey, persecution is coming. It's already here. You're going to have to go through it. How can I go through it? Well, I can stand for truth. We can support one another. And we can realize that our security is from the Lord. Our security is from the Lord. Those that face persecution, as Paul and many others, they get overjoyed with the fact that they get to be a part of something that Jesus Christ was a part of. They get to be persecuted just like Jesus Christ was. It's an honor for them. So persecution, while I'm not going to say it's fun, but I am going to say that it's going to produce something in us, a courage, a strengthening of our faith, a joy that we're going to have to just go out there and just tell the world. One of the signs that I didn't get to, a couple of the signs that I didn't get to one was spiritual warfare. I'm going to start preaching on Sundays these last two signs because we're going to just move on to the other things. But spiritual warfare and then apathy. And the reason why I want to preach on those two things is because I believe those two signs are the ones that create the materialism and the immorality and some of these other things. But that's just where the church is. And you know what? Persecution might be good for us. It might just wake us up. That we might need to be hit and knocked to the ground for us to wake up. I'm talking about the church as a whole. I'm not pointing anybody out because it's just the state of the church as a whole where we are. That's why we see media taking over. That's why we see Hollywood taking over. That's why we see government taking over. That's why we see healthcare being taken over by the government. Education, because why? The church has fallen asleep. And we need to be woken up. And the best way to be woken up is to be hit, to be knocked to the ground, to experience the persecution. Because believe it or not, everywhere in the world and every time there's ever been persecution, guess what's happened? The church has flourished. And I can tell you right now the church is not flourishing. Anywhere in this country. And so it may be God's blessing to let some of us experience a little bit of persecution in our life for our faith because of what it produces, because of what the results are. And so don't think of it as a bad thing. Don't think of it as God punishing you. Just think of it as, hey, God has counted me worthy of the cost of going through some persecution. And you'll be better for it on the other side. Paul, Peter, and who else went to prison with him? Peter. Well, they were beaten and thrown into prison, and they were told, "Hey, don't you ever preach about the name of Christ again. Don't ever let that name come out of your mouth again." And they said, "Well, hey, we're gonna follow our God and not listen to you. We can't help but not tell people about Jesus Christ, about our Savior." And they went through some pretty intense persecution. And I bet the same thing would happen for us. We would stand up for our faith and find ourselves being persecuted. I think we would be able to say the same thing that they said. Well, anyway, that's tonight. That's all I got for tonight. Again, come back next week. We're going to talk about the rapture. I'm going to try to convince y'all, if you're not already convinced. I believe there's probably more, but at least two reasons why we're going to be pre-trib raptured. So let's pray. Father,